Okay, so it is Friday, March 6th, and today's action in real estate is as follows. So, what we got going on is the labor market is showing some pretty good signs of weakness, right? From the standpoint that didn't create as many jobs as we were hoping for in February, and unemployment ticked up a little bit. Now, typically, this is really good for interest rates. It is not so far planning out that way. You're seeing the bond market sell off, and the reason why the bond market's selling off is although typically a bad labor market is a good thing for the bond market because usually what that turns into is a situation where investors start getting out of stocks potentially. So you see the stock market going down, and then you see a flight to safety over to the bond market to prepare for maybe a potential recession. And oh no, if we're too heavy one sector, maybe that sector is not looking good for future gains. Let's get out of that sector and let's put money somewhere safe, right? So usually bad for labor market, bad for businesses, bad for economy is usually good for mortgage rates. But with all the geopolitical tension, with everything going on in Iran, around the world, still on the back end of an inflation market, so there's a fear of inflation. Credit windows are really tight, and because there's still a human element to all of this of where do we put money for safekeeping. And if you have a fear of a recession and a potential fear of some form of inflationary event occurring, geopolitical tension across with Iran and what oil might do and make prices go up, that puts you in a position where maybe you're starting to bet that, hey, maybe we have what the worst thing we want in any sort of economic situation, which is stagflation, right? Where we have the labor market shrinking alongside of the cost of goods going up. That's the ultimate thing that we really never want as people on this planet that need to work for a living, right? That, people are losing jobs, but everything's actually getting more expensive. No bueno, right? So from that standpoint, what you're going to usually see in those moments that the market might be betting that could be happening as they look in the tea leaves of the data is you're going to see a move to cash, which means we're going to sell out of the stock market and we're not going to reinvest that money somewhere else. We're just going to sit on it, right? So we're going to park it. We're going to see what happens. We're going to see if maybe the tea leaves move around a little bit, see if the Iran stuff doesn't quite pan out the way that, it's looking like, and it's shorter and oil doesn't go to 125, 150, right? You're going to see a lot of that today in the coming weeks. I think if this doesn't get fixed soon with the Iran conflict from the standpoint of what the markets will start doing with betting, right? We'll just start seeing rates go up. We'll see the stock market go down, and it's just that play. It's just that bet that's happening. It doesn't mean that companies aren't like making money. It doesn't mean there's not jobs out there. It's not actually a recession right now from that standpoint, but it's a gamble on what if the labor market keeps deteriorating and inflation happens. That's the bet you see when you see both go down. When you see the value of bonds in the market go down, which when the value of bonds go down, interest rates go up. And then you see the stock market go down. When you see those two things go hand in hand next to each other, that's typically an investor gamble holistically that they just feel better saying, you know what, keep it in cash, right? Let's keep money in cash because we think if we put money here or money here, the cash is going to deteriorate faster than what we might get for a return. That's the gamble that's happening now, and you're probably just going to see it play out, right? Now, on to some good advice. So, good advice in what I've been seeing for clients relative to pre-approval, right? Pre-approval is the most important step you can make in any stage of real estate ownership from the standpoint of making a good financial decision, right? So buying your first house, buying your second house, selling a house to buy a house, whatever it is, the best thing you can do is really, really, really drill down your pre-approval steps and really make sure that you know your budget, you know your financing capability, you understand what's available for you for programs, that how you can structure your loan, right? That is the stage of the game in real estate that you shouldn't be doing things in a hasty, speedy manner. The downfall is that is what most of the market is trying to market to you, right? Yesterday I talked about AI and what it's going to do. It's going to make everything faster, right? And then I also kind of said that I hope what it does is when it makes everything faster, it allows us space to slow down. So that's something I always go over with my clients up front with pre-approval is just getting pre-approved. We can do that quickly. Send me your information. I look at the mortgage numbers and say, based on the mortgage numbers, this is what you qualify for. That can happen in a half hour. You get me all your stuff, I run your numbers, you can get pre-approved fast, right? That's okay. Nothing wrong with the speed there, right? The slowdown I'm talking about is what are your goals? What are you trying to do? Why are you buying this house? Why are you moving? There's a difference, I think, between getting pre-approved and getting well prepared, right? And I think the latter gets lost in the marketing mix from the mortgage industry, right? It's all speed. It's all how fast can you get an answer? How fast can you close a loan? How fast can you do this? It's all of that. But does that translate to you making the best, most informed decision, right? I don't think it does. I think the good way to look at it is real estate is a sector of industry that is incredibly reactive for the consumer. What I mean by that in terms of reactive for you as the consumer is the inventory in real estate does not get replenished, it gets replaced. And what I mean by that is when one house sells, that house doesn't usually go back up for sale right away after that. Another house comes up for sale down the block, the town over, what have you. But the house that you just looked at that to try to buy probably doesn't come back up for sale within your buying window of when you're trying to close on your next house, right? So if you're hot to trot for 125 North Main Street and 125 North Main Street sells, that house is probably gone. And the way that it sometimes work in real estate is that house might be gone forever, right? Family might buy that house and put it in trusts and it gets handed down for generations upon generations in America, right? Which is a beautiful thing. It's amazing. But once you start seeing it that way, that real estate only gets replaced, it doesn't replenish, right? Like a new property comes on, right? When we talk about data points, and I'm going to pick a town to talk about in a little bit as well, but when we talk about the data, like 100 houses for sale, 50 houses for sale, year in, year out, those aren't the same 100 or 50 houses, right? So they're typically different houses. So 100 houses that sell in 1 month in one town, right? The next month, if another 100 houses sell, which that'd be a big number, it's a big number in some towns, they're different houses. They're different neighborhoods. They're different layouts. They're different age of build. They're different need of capital expenses to bring them up to whatever you want, right? It's all nuanced and different. So because it's all nuanced and different, I call it a reactive market because all you can do is react to what's available in front of you at the time that you're shopping. You have no control over what's available for inventory. You have no control over interest rates, so on and so forth. So, because so much of that sector of real estate is reactive, my viewpoint I have with my clients is where can we be proactive? How well can I best prepare you so that when you're in the market shopping, you have the widest range of capacity available to you within your budget and profile, right? And what I mean by that is I'll use an example that I think is not necessarily overlooked, but maybe not applied the same way with every single loan officer, every single lender, bank out there, right? Where a conversation I have with my clients at the very beginning when they're getting pre-approved is what do you have available for funds now? Not what's your down payment percentage, not that, because I think that's what the market does, right? Are you putting 10% down? Are you putting 5? Are you putting 20? FHA 3.5, right? What are you putting down percentage wise? And now you're bracketed. So you just bracketed yourself the moment you do that mentally. If you say, I'm a 20% down buyer, right? What if putting 10% down makes more sense because it opens up more inventory because now you can look at a house that's a fixer upper, take that other 10% that you were going to put down as your down payment, put it into the house. Does that widen your range of inventory if inventory could potentially be the problem and or the part of the market that we're reactive to, right? Not a lot of clients when I say something like that to them go, Oh, that's actually what another lender also said. And I know I'm not the only one that approaches it that way. So I'm not saying I'm offering anything crazy or proprietary here. But what I'm saying is there's a big difference between getting pre-approved and getting well prepared. The well prepared part is the effective use of your money to achieve the goal of moving? Are you having that conversation with your loan officer? The effective use of your approval in the market that you're shopping in strategically to win in the market, because again, we're reactive to what's available for what's out there in the market. So when a house comes up that you want, you better be ready to rock and roll for it. Otherwise, you're going to be behind the eight ball compared to someone else that's a step ahead of you, right? And when that house sells, it's gone. You're never going to see it again, most likely. So getting well prepared, throwing the spaghetti against the wall, figuring out really what you have the capacity and capability of doing within your own profile and the mortgage world, what's available to you for programs, how can you structure your debt so that's the best outcome for you, as well as prepare for the marketplace that you're buying in and swimming in, and what's out there for inventory. Because if I can help you, or any loan officer can help you be in a position that you have the widest net available to cast as you're looking at inventory, you have the highest success rate of potentially catching a fish, right? If I have a wide net and I am trolling across the ocean floor, there's a good chance I'm getting something, right? If I have this teeny, I got like a little kid's net and I'm like off the side of the boat and I'm just like flailing that thing around in the ocean. Now I'm praying a fish jumps in my net, right? If you could visually see that. So getting prepared to sell your house, buy the next house, buy your first house, buy an investment property, whatever it is you're doing, take the time to really do it properly. Really understand what you can do, what you're comfortable doing, what you're not comfortable doing, what's available to you. Talk to people in these attorney, realtor, insurance agent, builder, contractor, right? Handyman, local people in the town you're moving to. Get as much information as you possibly can, right? That you're willing to take on. Figure out your finances to the T. Get as well prepared as you possibly can. Because here's why: the more prepared you are, the more confident of an offer you will make. And the more confident of an offer you will make when push comes to shove, the more confident your agent will be if you have an agent representing you making an offer. And the more confident that agent is making the offer to the listing agent, the more confident the listing agent is relative to your offer. And then the more confidently that listing agent represents your offer to the seller. And because the seller is just a person most of the time. I know there's some businesses out there that have gobbled up real estate the past few years, and there's some talking points coming down that maybe that changes soon, but what have you. Most sellers still in America are just people trying to move or needing to sell a property for some reason or another. And they're usually looking at their agent and saying, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't sell real estate for a living. I'm trusting you to give me good advice. Who should I pick to sell my house to based on what I've told you as to why I'm selling my house? It's a person problem. It's not a business. When you walk into Apple and you buy an iPhone, the salespeople there have cold math from Apple. How much can we take for an iPhone? This much. Okay. If we have an inventory, sell it to them. Okay. Swipe card. Here's your phone. Right. Yeah, I know they do a better job at the Apple Store of helping you understand how to use iPhones and what have you, right? They're really good at it. But it's still cold math from a higher up at a company as to what they can do, can't do, should do, and then they apply a warmth in terms of how they take care of you in the store, right? Real estate is not typically cold math. It's a lot of gut instinct. It's a lot of intuition. It's a lot of timing mattering just as much as money. And that's an odd position for most consumer interactions, right? Because that's typically not how we buy or sell things on a day-to-day basis, right? You go buy a car, it's really not like that unless you need a car. You might need a car, you just kind of have to buy something, right? But there's so much inventory of cars out there that there's really not that crazy like scare. You're like, yeah, my car broke down. I'm here. I got to buy something. It's 400 cars in this dealership today. Like, which one do I buy? right? It's not like, oh no, there's one Toyota Camry available within a 50-mile radius and 20 other people want it and I need a car. Oh no, that exists in real estate because you need a house and timing is of the essence. Sellers need to move and timing is of the essence. So getting pre-approved is not just about checking a box and saying, okay, I'm pre-approved now. It's about how well prepared am I for what is next? Am I ready to go win in the marketplace? Have I answered all of the questions, or do I have answers to the questions that I want? And am I ready to execute on something with the utmost confidence of my ability to tackle that thing of buying that house? Right. I parrot a lot of analogies with my clients because at the end of the day, I'm trying to help my clients understand. I'm not just trying to give them information, right? And I think there's a big difference there. I think there's a big difference between here's information and then also me saying, here's information. Do you understand? Right. So I use a lot of analogies. I'm trying to connect at a different level than just here's banking information, right? Here you go. No, here's banking information and do you understand? So I use the analogy with real estate of getting well prepared for real estate is the same thing that a surfer does. And I'm incredibly jealous of anyone out there that surfs. I wish it was one of those skills that I could just learn instantly and just be able to do it, right? I don't want to go learn how to surf because sharks scare the hell out of me. So I'm all set with flailing around in the ocean, not knowing what I look like or do to try to learn a skill. I can just watch other people do it and I'll go skiing. Skiing's where I'll get my kicks. So if I could do it without having to practice and falling in the ocean a crap ton and becoming, chicken noodle soup for a shark, I would. But a surfer, let's say the surfer's you, let's say real estate's the wave. The wave is coming. If you're not prepared for the wave comes, but you want to ride the wave. This is the equivalent of someone just waking up on a Sunday and going to an open house. Haven't talked to a loan officer, haven't talked to a realtor, haven't talked to an attorney, haven't sat down and run their budget. They haven't done anything. They've done nothing. They just show up to an open house, which, if that's your first step because you want to be a homeowner, go for it, right? Gets you in the door. You're in the ocean. I'm just telling you right now, most likely the wave's going to crash on you. But at least you're in the ocean. So still at least do that, right? It's better than nothing. And it gets now you're going to talk to a realtor, you're going to talk to a lender, you're going to get the information. So whatever the first step is in your journey, take the first step. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying from the standpoint of effectiveness of strategy, it's not the best. Me jumping in the ocean thinking I'm just going to surf a wave without understanding what surfing is and how to get good at it and what to do and what the steps are. And I just turn back and look at the wave and try to jump up on the board and take it on. I'm going to get trounced by that wave. It's just not going to happen, right? A good surfer, one, you practice, you get good at it. But when you really watch a good surfer, you see the wave coming, you see the wave building. They know the wave is going to get to a certain point at a certain point in time. They start paddling. They start paddling ahead of time before the wave comes. And then it's this synchronized, beautiful movement of paddle shifting into the waves on them. And they're jumping up on their surfboard and landing on it with perfect, majestic balance. And then the wave is building as they're getting momentum going down the wave and maybe into the tube and riding it. And then the wave crashes and they're done, right? The most important step for them to be able to ride the wave the way they want to at the peak of when the wave is the best possible version of that wave in that moment is they paddled before the wave came. They paddled before the wave came so that they could ride the tube. That is it. That's the simplest step if I look at surfing. Now, obviously, it's way more complex than that. And I try my best to visually remind you of like, what does that look like for a good surfer, right? And it happens like that, right? They're like paddle, 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 jump up, surfing, right? But it's those synchronized steps. The pre-approval is the paddle. The wave is real estate. If you want, the wave is happening whether you like it or not. A property is going to come on the market tomorrow and be sold next week. And if that's the house that you visioned your family living in for the next 30 years and you didn't start paddling to try to get it, it's not the market's fault, unfortunately. You got to paddle. You got to get pre-prepared. You got to get ready to rock and roll. And you got to attack it like a surfer attacks those first few steps as they're looking back over their board, seeing the wave come. and they start ferociously paddling and kicking and getting ready to rock and roll on that wave and jump up on that board and do their thing. If owning a home is really what you want to do, that's the most crucial step to all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm under agreement. I'm in the wave. I've closed. The wave's over. I have my house. That was a good wave, right? I think that's the best analogy for why I get pre-approved as well as pre-prepared. And now let's jump into some statistics, right? I already mentioned that I don't think it's going to be a great day for rates. It's already looking not that way as well, but now let's look at some market data. So I've got up here, let's see. I'm going to share my screen in a second. We're going to look at Scituate, Mass today. So I'm kind of hitting the South Shore. It's my area. We've already done Marshfield. We've already done Hanover. Now let's take a peek at Scituate. So share screen. First data point we're looking at is we're looking at same as the other ones. We're going to take a peek at pre-COVID, and then we're going to take a peek at during COVID and ever since then, right? This looks very similar to Marshfield. Hanover didn't have that much inventory. This looks very similar to Marshfield, right? You got the peaks and valleys, 120, 130. There's a pretty good low point there in 2018, but it's again seasonal. Everything, if you've been following along, July, peak, summer, down the summer months into fall, no one's listing, but houses are still selling, listing a little bit, but that absorption rate and the velocity of homes coming on and homes coming off the market for whatever strategic reason, whether they're being bought or people say, hey, my house hasn't sold. I don't want to be for sale during Thanksgiving, take it off the market, right? Delist it. That's just the flow of the four seasons in New England, right? So we're just seeing that same flow play out. And then again, summer, peak, September, summer, right? Around that same window, then down, and then back up. Again, summer, peak of total inventory for sale, and then back down, right? It's just going to do that song and dance. And then we got COVID hit, right? The velocity and absorption, houses are just flying off the shelf. We're not replacing them fast enough at all. They're just going, 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 going. Valley, peak, valley, peak, valley, peak. Kind of similar, but a little bit the same to Marshfield. I'd say slightly different in the sense that it looks like Scituate for that really bad point never really, really crumbled like Hanover and Marshfield did in terms of like total inventory for sale. I think Marshfield was like 10. I think Hanover was like 4 or 6, right? So they kept a healthy level there. And then again, I'm not looking at like how many total homes are available, square miles Hanover is compared to Marshfield, Scituate, zoning, what's available for houses, inventory, right? All of those things are going to matter. Just looking at total numbers, we're doing what I call stupid math, right? Not super detailed, but detailed enough to get an idea of what's going on. And then again, we don't get anywhere near the 50% number that we were at prior to it, right? So 136 was the peak. We're not even getting close to 60 houses, right? Not even near 50% of what the peak was. And then same with the valley. The valley is not even getting near. I guess it kind of can right here. Maybe that's an outlier though, right? I wonder if we go back further in time, if that's a big outlier there and the valleys are a little closer to that 60, 65, 70 mark. And the 42 was just a weird season there for whatever reason for Scituate, right? And it kind of plays out in the spring summer market too. So who knows? That's a weird shot in time there, probably relative to what it typically looked like, my guess, right? At least for this period of time. So it looks about the same. The peaks and valleys are starting to get a little bit better, right, from that standpoint, but pretty flat. Now let's look at home value, and this is where it's almost a mirror image relative to the other two towns, right? So Marshfield, Hanover, you got your run up, you got your peak in '06, you got your climb down. You lost about 100,000 in equity if you bought a house in '06 and then sold it in 2012. You gained about 100,000 in equity if you bought a house in 2000, survived '06, survived '07, and still sold it in 12. Real estate's always relative, right? So yeah, bad market compared to here, fine market compared to here. So it matters how long you own, because if I just draw a straight line from here to here, it's still up, right? If I go like this and follow time, yeah, it's slightly different. But if I just do a straight line in real estate, it usually typically always goes up. I had this conversation the other day. Forgive me if I'm parroting anything I said in any other podcast, but real estate is relative to time. And you don't own real estate to try to beat other markets. You own real estate to stay with the high tide. And what I mean by that is real estate's one of the only tangible assets that it's something you buy. And I think it's an asset and a liability because it costs you money while you own it, particularly if you live in it. If it's not an investment property and you're talking about real estate as an investment for a piece of thing that you own and live in, while you live in it, it's a liability. Whenever you turn around and sell it, it's now potentially an investment based on how much money you potentially made over the duration of ownership, but you also spent a bunch of money to own it alongside of whatever your mortgage payment was, right? Or your initial cash into it. So it's probably barely breaking even on it being an investment to a degree or another. But it's a good safety net because there's only a couple ways to live in America: rent, own, live with family, homeless, right? So if that's the math, owning wins compared to renting if it's finances to a degree or another, unless you have such a low rent number that you're so below the market everywhere that you have so much flexibility with all of your excess income that you can just crush other investment vehicles. If you have a relatively normal market rent number and you buy a relatively normal market rent property in an area, usually ownership beats renting in the long run, right? If you're not planning on moving. So I think that's the other caveat to it. Now, from the standpoint of looking at these numbers for Scituate, right? Peak, valley, the climb out, and it's just done nothing but go up. We see that little dip 2022, same thing we saw in the other towns, right? Again, I think a lot of that is just knee jerk of, oh no, rates, and but people decide they still want to buy. Look at that, almost double from the peak of '06. So again, if you bought here, 26 years goes by in a blink of an eye. So you buy a house in 2000 going, you know what? I'm going to raise my family in this house, live here for the next 26 years. Oh, look how much my house is worth. Yay. Oh no, real estate's terrible. It went down in value. It's not about beating the market. It's about keeping with the high tide. And if you looked at the cost of things, it probably goes pretty similar to real estate. And what I mean by that is inflation, wages, actual like affordability, stuff like that. It usually keeps along with those metrics, right? It stays along with the high tide. As everything gets more expensive, usually real estate does too. I'm not saying it's like the perfect solution. I'm not saying that that's how it should be or whatever. All I'm saying is that's what it does. It's a free market. It is what it is. The value of a piece of property is determined by what someone's going to pay for it. No one's controlling it. Realtors don't control it. Lenders don't control it. Builders don't control it. Some of the building stuff gets controlled by it, right? As the cost of a 2x4 goes up, so does the cost of the build of a new home. As the cost of the build of a new home goes up in areas where new homes are being built, that's going to bring up resale prices, right? Because it's going to just change the dynamic of the market. So as the cost of hiring a contractor goes up to fix your house that you've owned for 30 years, you expect the value of your house to go up too, because you're like, hey, it's going to cost me so much for me to add this addition. Did my value go up, right? It's one of the only tangible assets or tangible liabilities. Let's replace assets with tangible liabilities, because the tangible liability to me is the jeans you're wearing, the shirt you're wearing, the hat I have on, the shoes I have on, the car I drive, right? The food I eat, tangible liabilities. They cost me money. They don't necessarily generate me a money back return to a degree or another. You can get a little fine tuned to say that, like, yeah, if I didn't wear clothes and I ran around naked, I probably wouldn't be hireable. So clothes do get me somewhat of a return, but in their actual intrinsic value of I'm going to take this thing and bring it back to the market and sell it, right? Once you eat food, we all know you're not selling that again. Once you wear your jeans, unless they're like weird Levi's from like 1940 with some weird stitching in them that makes them worth a bunch of money because they were made in some factory that doesn't exist anymore, and some jean head out there is like, I'll give you $500 for those jeans because they don't make denim like that anymore. I'm not talking about that type of stuff. I'm not talking about, the Shelby Mustang from Gone in 60 Seconds. I'm talking about a Honda Civic, a consumable. I'm talking about regular Levi's, a consumable. I'm talking about regular shoes. I'm talking about Jordans that are signed by him after he, came back and wore 45 and, none of that. I'm not talking about anything that is in the corners of these markets. I'm talking about actual commodities that you pay money for and use them. And then after you've paid money and used them, almost everything goes down in value, right? Your TV, the shoes, your socks, everything. Everything that you buy and spend money on and use typically goes down in value. Real estate happens to be one of the only things that is a tangible liability that you buy it, you use it while you live in it, and it costs you money while you live in it, right? Like that's not doesn't replace the fact that, again, someone's going to have to pay for that roof, someone's going to have to maintain that lawn. It's going to cost you money while you own it, which is why it's not an asset, not a perfect investment while you live in it, because it's going to cost you, right? But when you go to resell it, it's probably worth more at face value compared to what you paid for it, probably, right? Which again, even though jeans are like $100 now for like a decent pair of jeans, right? You go want to buy like a pair of Lucky Brand, Levi, whatever. They're like $70 to $100, $150 for like good jeans now, right? You can probably get cheaper jeans than that. I'm just saying, if you're like, I want to get a good pair of jeans, they're they're probably around that price, right? So I know 30 years ago they were probably cheaper than that, right? Again, take a pair of 30-year-old jeans that are just normal jeans, bring them to me today, and ask me how much I'd pay for those jeans. They're normal jeans. I can go to the store and get brand new ones that no one else has farted in. They're good to go. Nothing wrong with them. If you're giving me your 30-year-old jeans, that how good is that stitching, right? Are these going to fall apart on me, right? Like, am I really going to buy these jeans and bring them to a tailor and have them fix all the problems with it? If I'm doing that, I got to get new jeans now are like 100, right? You paid 50 for these when these were brand new 30 years ago. Like, I'll give you like $10 for those jeans, man, right? Like, I'll just, why would I? That doesn't make mathematically, it just doesn't make sense, right? Because if I got to buy jeans and I got to worry about bringing them to a tailor and fixing them, and spending money, and now I'm out the jeans, like the convenience factor there of just like being a person and living a day-to-day life, like I'm not, you can ask what, $80 for those jeans when I can go get brand new ones for 100, or maybe even on sale for 60, right? Like, it just, the value of those types of things usually goes down. Real estate's the only one where it's like, hey, you paid 200 grand for this house 30 years ago. It needs a lot of work and love. What is it worth today? Today is worth 600 grand, even though it needs love and work, right? That's the equivalent of buying battered up jeans somehow for way more money than what someone paid brand new for those jeans. Again, not happening unless it's collectible. There's just no other tangible liability that you can look at that costs you money while you own it and while you use it that goes up in value, your car, everything. So that's my soapbox rant there on real estate. And that's the data for Scituate, and that's today's action in real estate.